One of the most disturbing artifacts from Roman Egypt is the figure of a woman with nails stuck into her. You'd be forgiven for thinking this was curse magic. In fact, it was made by someone who loved her deeply. We know this because an identical spell has been found in the Greek Magical Papyri. Take clay and make two figures. Make the man in the form of Ares, god of war, holding a sword and threatening to plunge it into her neck, and make the woman with arms behind her back, on her knees. Take copper needles and stick one in the brain, saying, "I am piercing your brain," and stick two in the ears, and two in the eyes, and one in the mouth. This spell promised to make the woman fall in love, but this doesn't sound like love. How do we make sense of this violent imagery? Maybe this was simply a misogynistic spell focused on dominating a woman with very little to do with actual love. Or perhaps this kind of love magic had a social purpose. It helped people let off steam about their crush, the ancient equivalent of motorway underpasses where teens spray graffiti. I don't find either of these theories satisfying, firstly because similar spells directed at men have been recorded, and secondly because to look for an explanation which seems logical to us today is to fundamentally misunderstand the past. People absolutely believed this stuff worked, not that it helped them calm down a bit. So why was ancient love magic so intense? To answer that, we're going to have to explore Greek ideas about love, magic, and madness, which together made sticking needles into a voodoo doll of your crush perfectly sensible. Hi, I'm Josh and welcome to Blue Fawn, an AI-free channel where we look at religious and esoteric history. If you enjoy this content and want more of it, my fantasy novel is now out in paperback. You may have noticed at the beginning of the video I mentioned this figure and spell come from Egypt, and yet I'm describing them as Greek. This is because the collection of magical papyri date from the Ptolemaic dynasty, a lineage of Greek kings and queens who ruled Egypt after Alexander the Great's invasion. The Ptolemies styled themselves as pharaohs, but the language of government and education was Greek. They founded the magnificent city of Alexandria and imported classical texts from Athens, making it one of the great Greek centers of learning. This Hellenization went deep. Even after the Roman conquest, Greek remained the lingua franca. Because of this, in magical spells from this period, we often find a combination of Greek and Egyptian ideas. The love spell is a great example of that. You might recognize this image of a bound captive from our last video on Egyptian magic. There we saw how ancient pharaohs, starting from 3000 BC, used this motif as a kind of war magic, helping them to dominate foreign peoples. But that doesn't fully explain our spell, because in that context magic was being used against enemies of the state. This, on the other hand, is personal, private, amorous magic. To understand why war magic is being deployed here, we have to turn to the Greek context. Around 700 BC, Hesiod wrote his Theogyny, one of our earliest sources for Greek mythology. There he tells us Eros, god of love and desire, was the fourth being to come into existence after Chaos, Gaia, and Tartarus. This might sound a bit unfamiliar. Wasn't Eros that little Cupid with wings and a bow who was the child of Aphrodite, the goddess of love? That idea would emerge later on, but Eros was originally conceptualized as one of the great ancient forces in the universe. So 300 years later, in Aristophanes' play The Birds, Eros is born from a primordial egg and fathers the human race. In the Greek mystery cults, Eros was believed to have been reborn in Dionysus, whose brutal, frenzied rituals became notorious. This dark, ancient Eros was rather frightening. Even as Aphrodite's cult grew and Eros was reduced to her son, he retained some of his chaotic power. Love poets writing in the style of Anacreon would describe Eros as cruel and capricious. Eros struck my face, told me to run with him. Through fast-flowing torrents, up peaks, down ravines, the heat overwhelmed me. My soul rose to my lips, and I passed away. Then Eros wafted my face with his wings and said, "You don't know how to love." This kind of love was not something you wanted to experience. It was like a disease, a divine madness which left you helpless. The ancient romance stories are full of this kind of thing. The guy and the girl see each other for the first time and literally fall sick. In Heliodorus' story, The Ethiopian, the beautiful Chariclia experiences just this. Can you not see the dark rings under her eyes? How restless is her gaze? How pale is her face? Can you not see that her mind wanders? That she says the first thing that comes into her head? That she is suffering from incurable insomnia and has lost all self-confidence? Chariclia's family and friends are convinced she is dying, and they desperately ask for help from a doctor and a priest. The cure, it turns out, is to arrange a meeting with the man she has fallen in love with. Greek mythology boasts many intense love affairs. Eros and Aphrodite are often the gears in the background, turning the wheels of the story. Phaedra falls in love with her stepson after Aphrodite gets annoyed. Helen leaves her husband to marry Paris, starting the Trojan War. Even the mighty Zeus is not immune. In Aeschylus's tragic play Prometheus Unbound, we hear the story of Io, a virgin priestess who catches Zeus's eye. To win her over, the Lord of Olympus sends her nightly dreams, where a voice tells her, Zeus is inflamed by passion's dart for you, and is eager to unite with you in love. Do not spurn the bed of Zeus, but go forth, that the eye of Zeus may find respite from its longing. Later, Zeus threatens Io's family through the divine oracle, forcing them to give her up or be struck by lightning. In the Greek imagination, Eros was a powerful, uncontrollable force which, on a whim, could turn friends to enemies, citizens to traitors, and self-controlled rulers into abusive tyrants. I think we're beginning to understand the intensity of the violent language being used in this spell. This has been written by someone who believes they are literally madly in love. They're sick with it, and they desperately want to spread that illness to the object of their affection. But there's another concept at play here, the Greek idea of magic. We've seen in previous videos that ancient Egyptian magic was very different to how we think about it today. For them, magic was a universal primordial force, which was accessed by priests who could read and write. Magic was part of the state religion. It was neither good nor bad. It was simply a fact of life. In ancient Greece, on the other hand, we start to get a glimmer of some more familiar ideas about magic. Now, of course, it's dangerous to summarize what an entire civilization thinks about something, but by looking at the limited evidence, we can start to put together a picture of how magic fit into Greek society. In Homer's Odyssey, written around 700 BC, we meet Circe, a powerful enchantress who uses a magical wand against the hero. Odysseus protects himself with a special herb, thanks to advice from the god Hermes. We have some early ideas about magic here. Secret tools and plants can be used to manipulate the world. The gods can reveal these hidden things. It would be dangerous for us to draw too fine a distinction between the magic being used in the temple and the magic used in, say, a village hut. Take the example of the Iynx, a small four-spoke wheel that, when spun, made a whistling noise. This Iynx is connected to love magic. Like the wryneck bird it is named after, it's designed to fascinate and manipulate through magical sound and movement. We know this was used in private love magic rituals. But it's also something the goddess Aphrodite is depicted holding on Greek jars. In some cases, she actually teaches humans how to use it to make someone fall in love with them. It's possible there were even large gold Iynx wheels in some ancient Greek temples. So in this situation, we can see there's continuity between private rituals and temple worship endorsed by the city-state. But around 400 BC, a division began to emerge between the two. The mystery cults, especially those connected to Dionysus, became more and more popular. They offered people marginalized by the city-state a way to express their power. Slaves, women, and foreigners joined the secret, chaotic night processions. The men and women who led these ceremonies were somehow different from the priests you'd find in the temple. They practice secret rituals, sometimes involving social taboos. They might be called gor-dje-as, meaning howlers and groaners. But to show how different they were, Greek writers also used a new term, magos, originally meaning a Persian priest. These mystery cult priests weren't Persians, but they were often outsiders, not part of the religious establishment. The private, secretive rituals of the magos, their magic, were not like formal religion. In the minds of some Greeks, a division emerged, the famous division we still have today between religion and magic. This division seems to be clear in the mind of Plato, writing around 300 BC. In his Republic, he tells us that some seers and begging priests, that is, the ritual specialists of the mystery cults, were actually offering their services to rich people to give them an unfair spiritual advantage. If they would like to harm an enemy, they would be able, at low cost, to injure righteous people through some incantation or curse tablet, because they were able, as they brag about, to persuade the gods to help them. Magic was all about manipulation and private interest, while religion was for the public good. Now, there were many gods these sorcerers might turn to, but for Plato, Eros was the supreme god of sorcery. He was the go-between the world of mortals and the divine. Therefore, divination belongs to him entirely, and the arts of those priests who occupy themselves with sacrifices, initiations, incantation, and with every sort of sorcery. This sounds like that very ancient Eros we heard about earlier, a raw, powerful life force of a god, but Plato is also drawing on developments in philosophy. From roughly 400 BC, some Greek thinkers developed very high ideals about God. The original divine force was so supreme and perfect that it was practically unreachable. To claim that the gods could be manipulated by petty human rituals, such as the burning of figurines or chanting a spell, was disgusting to these philosophers. But it's important to remember the bias of our sources. Plato and his fellow philosophers were a minority in the Greek city-states. Sometimes they were even accused of being magicians themselves. In reality, private magical rituals flourished in Athens at the same time that Plato was condemning them. Clay figurines and curse tablets are common finds. It was perfectly normal for an Athenian to go to the temple and then go to the magician. It was the city's worst-kept secret. Practically everyone was doing it. There was a significant underground magical economy providing considerable employment and offering a hierarchy of services from the poor to the very rich. In other Greek cities, certain forms of sorcery were officially banned, but generally, magic only became a legal matter when it was connected to murder. So now we've established the intense, crazy world of Greek love and the manipulative, semi-secret world of Greek sorcery. When we combine them together, boom. Everything explodes in Euripides' play Medea, a tragedy that begins with the use of love magic. The famous orator Pindar tells us that Jason won the love of the foreign princess Medea through the guidance of Aphrodite and the use of an Iynx bird and wheel. And the mistress of the swiftest arrows bore from Olympus the dappled Iynx, having yoked it forespoked to an inescapable wheel, the bird of madness, and prayers and charms did she teach to the wise son of Aeson, so that he might steal from Medea all the respect for her parents, and might arouse with the whip of persuasion as she burned in her heart. Medea is struck down with love for Jason, a love so terrible that she will betray her father and end her brother's life in order to make Jason the hero. Then she sails away with him to Greece, leaving her home forever. Things are only going to get worse from here, as Euripides' tragedy takes over the narrative. Now Jason decides he'd quite like to marry a local Greek princess and send Medea into exile, or, if she's well behaved, keep her on as a concubine. Jason has made a fatal error because Medea is also skilled in using magic, specifically herbs and drugs, pharmakon. First she makes a love potion for the king of Athens and gives it to him on the condition that he'll let her stay with him later. Then she poisons a robe and crown and gives them as a gift to Jason's fiancée.
Alas, the bride had died in horrible agony, for no sooner had she put on Medea's gifts than a devouring poison consumed her limbs as with fire, and in his endeavour to save his daughter, the old father died too. Jason's marriage is over, but Medea, perhaps driven mad by the love magic Jason used on her, decides to take things a step further. She resolves to destroy the son she had with Jason, and brandishing a knife, runs off stage to find them. Horrified, the chorus break the rules of Greek drama and chase after her, only to hear the children scream. In a final scene, Medea appears holding the children's bodies, seated on a heavenly chariot. She confronts Jason, enjoys her revenge, and flies off to marry the king of Athens. In the most famous retelling of this story, Apollonius' Argonautica, the writer draws his own conclusions from this disturbing tale. Wretched love, great woe and great object of hatred for humans, from you destructive strife, groaning and wailing, and countless other pains pierce us. Rise against the sons of our enemies, God, in the way you cast hateful madness into Medea's heart. Medea's story shows how volatile the mix of love and magic could be.
Of course, this is high drama. It's designed to shock us. Interestingly, Medea only came third place in the competition it was entered into in ancient Greece, even though today it's considered a great tragedy. Still, there are other less astonishing examples of this kind of love magic. In Theocritus' second Idyll, a kind of monologue designed to be mimed out, we see a much more everyday scene with a woman simply worried about the love of a man.
We're going to look at this Idyll in more detail in the next video when we study the origins of the goddess Hecate. But the text also shows how some of the themes explored in the story of Medea could manifest in everyday life. The woman Samatha burns herbs and fragments from her lover's clothes in a magical fire. All the while she spins the Iynx wheel, her love, like Medea's, seems to almost slide into hatred. I want to make a fire spell for my cruel lover, who for 12 days has not come to see me. The wretch! He doesn't know if I'm alive or dead, and has not even knocked on my door. In the morning I'll go see him myself, but tonight I'll put a spell of fire on him. This desire to see her lover share the burning emotions she is going through is soon explained. Woe to me, hateful love! Why have you clung to me, you dirty leech, and drained my body of every red drop of blood?
We can imagine a similarly aggrieved lover making the voodoo doll and casting spells in this frame of mind. But there's one more aspect of this disturbing doll we've not investigated yet, and that is the power of noise.
The words scratched out on metal and buried with the figurine were designed to be read. The Iynx charm was meant to whistle. These spells were spoken performances. No wonder Theocritus decided to turn one into a mini play. Even more than Egyptian magic, Greek magic was audible.
The Greek Magical Papyri are full of commands to make special noises. Whisper something there, shout something here, go aye, make a popping sound, make a clicking noise, and above all, pronounce the spell with confidence and power. Of course, something which is said can also be overheard. Samatha says her spell at a crossroads at night, and in one sense it feels quite secret. But when we think about someone standing at the meeting point of 2 or 3 main roads with a blazing fire, we start to realize that she would have been visible to a lot of people. Surely others saw her leaving the city with her bundle of herbs and firewood. Perhaps some of the neighbours followed her and are hiding in a bush as she says her spells. Maybe that's who we are in the play, the neighbours hiding and eavesdropping on what's happening. Whatever the case, one thing is clear: the next morning her lover will know about the spell. Love magic was a secret that everyone was designed to know.
After hearing about his former lover's spell, Delphus, her boyfriend, would have had a couple of options. Firstly, he might be frightened of the magic. Perhaps he'd start to feel a burning sensation in his chest. Maybe the only cure was to get back together. or hire a more powerful magician to protect him. If he were less superstitious, maybe he'd feel sorry for Samatha, driven to use spells in her insanity, a compassion that would drive them back together. But what if the reason Delphus had forgotten Samatha was social? Maybe his family didn't like her, maybe he was supposed to be marrying someone else, then Samatha's spell could be used as an excuse. Yes, he had promised to break things off, but then he fell under the sway of love magic, and we all know how powerful that can be. People could use love magic as a way to justify unacceptable social decisions. The most famous example of this is a speech given by the orator Gorgias. Already mentioned earlier, the beautiful Helen of Troy famously left her husband to run away with Paris, starting the Trojan War. Gorgias, in an attempt to advertise his skills as a great speaker, gave an oration where he defended Helen's actions, arguing she was blameless in the matter. He argued Helen betrayed her husband and country for one of 4 reasons. Either the gods made her do it, she was physically forced, she was in love, or powerful words compelled her.
On the first 3 charges, Gorgias easily removes any blame from Helen. Helen was weaker than male warriors and the gods, so it's hardly her fault if they forced her to do something, and if she was in love, well, that was also a kind of god, or at least a sickness, so she couldn't be blamed for that either.
Then Gorgias moves on to speech. Here he seems to be suggesting a scenario where Paris used some kind of love magic on Helen. The powerful words acted like a drug. When the power of incantations enters our soul with the help of belief, it charms and persuades and transforms the soul through sorcery.
Paris's powerful, deceptive incantations reached into Helen's soul and compelled her to go with him, in the process freeing her of responsibility.
The irony in the speech is that Gorgias's oration is itself like a magical spell, also justifying Helen's actions to wider society. Coming back to the voodoo doll, we can see it from another perspective now. Is this bound, nailed captive actually a symbol of liberation? A reason to justify following your heart's desire? An invitation to break social convention?
Perhaps we can start to make sense of some of the other violent and disturbing love spells from the Greek Magical Papyri. The prayer to Selene, asking her to drag the victim by their hair to the person saying the spell, or quite a strange spell designed to be written with a nail from a shipwreck and then cast into the ocean. It seems to be asking, do you want to shipwreck your life with me?
Through a mixture of strange stories and archaeology, I hope you've been able to see how much richer and more meaningful Greek love magic is than a 21st century surface level reading offers.
Love was madness, magic was manipulation, and love magic was a secret everyone was meant to know.
Because of this context, it actually worked. It was, as the Egyptians love to say, effective.
If this tells us anything today, it is that human love, in all its beauty and ugliness, is an extraordinarily powerful force.
A big thank you to our channel member, and if you would like to help the channel and enjoy early access to videos, why not consider joining us here on YouTube? Or if you'd like to watch ad-free, join on Patreon. I've been so excited by the recent growth in members. There are now 10,000 subs. Thanks to you all. And see you next time.